Today we are demonstrating the Datahaven for Dynamics AX OCR extension to show how it can save your organization time and money by reducing data entry costs for accounts payable invoices. Automated data entry begins by getting documents into the system so the OCR engine can process them. Documents come into an organization via postal mail, fax, or email. Regardless of how invoices come into the organization, they are sent to the Datahaven for Dynamics workflow. From AX, we'll launch the workflow window. You can see the Datahaven for Dynamics workflow control displayed inside of this window. Here, Datahaven's OCR extension monitors the queue, monitors the pending OCR queue and picks up any invoices that come in and processes them. Documents can get into workflow in many ways. If documents come in via paper, they can be scanned using the scan button down at the bottom of the drop zone. Also, documents can be imported automatically if they come in via fax or via email. And also, they can simply be dragged and dropped onto the drop zone down here to get them into workflow. Currently, we have 2 invoices that are already in the system, so let's take a look at those. The first one's from a vendor named JWS of Colorado. It has several line items, and it's not a large invoice. It's about $1,500. That one was only 1 page. The next invoice is from a vendor named Stewart Apothecary. It's got far more line items and even goes over to a second page, and it's for around $2,700. So you can imagine how long it would take to key in an invoice of this size using a manual data entry process. We received another invoice via email. So let's go over to Outlook and take a look at that one. This invoice is also from JWS of Colorado. It's got only 3 line items, so this is a much smaller invoice. We're going to go ahead and we're going to drag this invoice into the system using the Datahaven for Dynamics Outlook extension. The Outlook extension allows operators that don't have AX to be able to participate in workflows, or in this case, to simply contribute a document to workflow. So if I drag and drop it, we see the same pending OCR queue, and I'll drop it in there. The OCR engine immediately picks it up and starts processing the documents because I have my batch size set to 3. The OCR process will take just a few seconds for a batch of 3 invoices. While that's running, you might be asking yourself how OCR can be effective for AP invoices since the formats are all vendor generated. You can see examples of 2 invoices here that we're getting ready to process. Each has common data elements such as invoice numbers and invoice dates, as well as line items. But these data elements are located on different places on each vendor's invoice. The automated recognition system needs to know how to find all these data elements, so it would seem that keeping up with all the different templates on the admin side would negate the data entry time and money savings you get from using automation. But Datahaven's OCR extension does things differently. We do store a library of templates, which we actually call fingerprints, each of which relates to a specific vendor. However, instead of IT resources having to maintain the fingerprint library and set up new vendors, data entry operators train the system to recognize new vendor formats while they're performing their data entry functions. And we'll see an example of that as we get into the next step, and you'll see how simple and fast this process is. The OCR background processes should be done. So now we'll move on to the next step, which is verify. The verify step is where the data entry operator reviews the results of the OCR process. In addition to reading data off the invoices, the OCR engine runs configurable business rules against all the data to ensure that our data quality is high. OCR technology has come a long way, but it's not perfect. So the business rules and verify process close the gaps. You'll see that most of the data entry fields are filled in, so that means that we were able to match up this image with a fingerprint we had on file for Stewart Apothecary. You'll also notice that fields are listed here in multiple colors. The fields that are listed in blue didn't fail any business rules, so we don't have to review those fields. Examples of business rules we ran on this invoice were making sure that we had a valid invoice date, and also it gets a bit more complicated. We add up all the line totals and make sure that they match up with the invoice total. The field listed down here in yellow failed a special business rule called a low confidence character check, and that's specific to OCR. The OCR engine assigns a confidence rating to every character that it recognizes, and if any character falls below a certain threshold, it flags the entire field in yellow so that the operator can see what they need to correct. And also it flags the individual characters in red. When you use hotkey navigation to iterate through the invoices, or to iterate through the data entry fields, it places your cursor directly on the characters that you need to review. So not only are you only reviewing a small subset of the fields on this invoice, you're only having to look at a even smaller subset of characters, so you can see where you can gain some major efficiency by using this technology. Also, there's a small image or snippet of the data entry area that we're currently keying right above the data entry field, so the operator doesn't have to spend time looking back and forth between the image to find the area of data that we're keying. But also, the system highlights the area that we're keying on the image, so if we need to see a contextual view of what we're currently keying, then we can go look at the image and it's highlighted for us. You'll notice that I'm iterating through the line item details, so in addition to header data, we're also capturing all the line item details off an invoice. You can see all the details that the OCR engine automatically captured, so I'm glad that I didn't have to key those in because it would have taken a long time. I will note that this is a non-PO invoice, so when this invoice gets pushed over into Dynamics AX, it'll automatically create a brand new purchase invoice record, and it'll also add all the line items, and then a manager will have to perform a review before this invoice can be posted for payment. We're finished with this invoice, so now we'll move on to the next one. This is our invoice from JWS of Colorado, and you can see here that most of the data entry fields are blank. So that means that we didn't have a fingerprint on file for JWS of Colorado. So we're going to go ahead and train the system to recognize this vendor's invoice. We'll start out by associating the image with a particular vendor. To do that, I'll type in a partial vendor name and also grab another piece of cross-reference information such as the zip code. Then I'll click Lookup Data, which performs a lookup in AX and finds the vendor ID so we can associate that with this invoice. Now we'll need to perform the rest of the data entry, and you'll see that the invoice date is already filled in as well as the total, and that's because of a technology called IntelliCate. IntelliCate uses a library of keywords to automatically locate pieces of information on the invoice. In this case, it found the word date, then it looked to the right and it found that date field. We did the same thing for the total. It found the word total and then looked to the right and found the total. And that's important for a field like total because it could be located higher or lower on the image depending on how many lines we have. It could also be located on another page besides the first page. So with IntelliCate, we can find that value no matter where it's located. For the rest of the data entry fields, we'll need to perform data entry using clicking key, which lets me click on an area of the image, and it automatically populates the field with the area that I click on. Not only is this a fast and error-free way to do data entry, but also the system's going to remember everywhere that I click, and it's going to store it with this fingerprint so that it'll know where to look for these data elements the next time we get an invoice from this vendor. We'll also need to zone the line item fields, and that's a simple process as well. All we have to do is zone the first line item, again using clicking key. I clicked the Find Details button, and based on me pointing out where the first line was located, it was able to pull in all 7 data entry fields, all 7 line items. That's all that's involved with creating a new fingerprint for a vendor. So now, the next time we get an invoice from JWS of Colorado, it'll automatically find all the pieces of data on this document, and we won't have to repeat this fingerprinting process. This next invoice is also from JWS of Colorado. You'll notice here that, once again, all the data entry fields are blank. And until we actually export all of our invoices over to AX, it's not going to store the fingerprints in our fingerprint library. But the system does recognize that we have seen this fingerprint before, and we might have one that will match because the sticky available button was highlighted. When I click that, it automatically populates all the data fields very quickly. I don't have to go through the same fingerprinting process. So you can see how the fingerprint we created during the last step is now used for this particular vendor's invoice format. That's all for our data entry. So now we'll finish up our batch and we'll move on to the next step, which is export. For export, the OCR engine packages up all the invoice data we recognized into XML and sends it over to Dynamics AX Web Services to create the new invoices. Additionally, the document image is linked to the new invoice record so that any operator who's performing an approval or audit can see the source invoice that created the AX record. Export is done, so now we'll go over to AX and we'll see the results. We'll navigate over to the Pending Vendor Invoices page. Here we can see the 3 invoices that we created. The first for Stewart Apothecary, you can see my invoice image attached over here as well, 2 pages. Then also the 2 invoices for JWS of Colorado, and also the images attached there as well. You'll notice that as I click on these different invoices, the Datahaven for Dynamics control that you see over here on the right-hand side automatically switches to show the record for whichever record we have displayed. So you see the documents here in context with the record. The idea here is you don't have to search for record. You don't have to search for the documents, and also you don't have to even click a button to launch a separate window to view the documents. The documents are available right here alongside your AX records, and it's right here embedded on the window with Dynamics AX. The folder structure you see here looks like a Windows folder structure, but it's not stored in Windows. It is dynamically displayed from the database based on whichever record you have selected. It's configurable to show whatever documents you want to see based on the current record. If we go over to a vendor record, then we can see a different folder structure that we've set up and configured specifically for vendors. Here we have a vendor miscellaneous folder where you can store documents that relate specifically to a vendor record, such as contracts or agreements. Also, we've included all of the pending invoices for the vendor. We've rolled those up in this view as well. So here we can see all the invoices that are outstanding for this particular vendor from the vendor record. So here we can see our invoice that we processed earlier from JWS of Colorado. From this same view, if we want to attach documents to the vendor record, we can either scan documents directly into the record if they're paper documents, or if we have electronic documents, then we can drag and drop them onto the record as well. So if I grab this document from my desktop and drop it onto the drop zone, now I can attach that document directly to my vendor record. Thank you for viewing the demo. You can see how the Datahaven for Dynamics AX solution can save you time and money by reducing your data entry costs with the OCR extension for accounts payable, and by making all your documentation immediately available alongside your AX records.